This video is going to be partly in person, and I'm going to show some screenshots later. So these are my two 3D printed pieces, and they were, I think, one of the most fun and challenging things of this project. So the 3D printing was because at first, I can show some pictures, the hand didn't look natural. I was just using plates to cover them, and it was just too flat and straight, so I wanted to maybe make it more smooth. My idea was to have one part for the palm, so over here, and one part for the back of the hand. And my design process was basically, first, okay, I'll show pictures, but first, first I sketched all the shape that they had to be and where the connections would be. So I knew how that would look in the 3D model. So I kind of figured out and planned out how large they would be and where the cutouts would be and where the holes would be, so that they would all fit together neatly in the end. How I made this model was actually quite difficult, as this was my first time ever doing anything with 3D printing. Although I did have quite a lot of knowledge about it from watching some videos, but this was my first time. So I was using Fusion 360, and it was also my first time using the software to model anything. And what I did was, first I took a model of a hand, and that was going to be the base. Then I made some schematics for where the holes were and the measurements, which I used from my sketches. Then I used an extrude to extrude the schematics into the hand at the right place, so that only the schematic part of the hand would remain and everything else would be cut away. So yeah, once I did that, what I had to do was scale it down a lot, like shrink it down in this direction, because the hand, it stood out too much, and it was a bit too big for my model, so I had to scale it down a lot. So you can see how these ridges are actually quite small compared to how big they would be in real life, and how this pattern or texture of the palm is scaled down a lot from the bigger differences in height and elevation. So yeah, that was one more thing I had to do to get that right. And finally, the hardest part was making sure that there would be holes inside of here. As I said, I have very little experience with Fusion, so I had no idea how to get the correct holes in here. So what I ended up doing is I went on Google and I found a proper model for these types of holes, and they were in the form of squares eventually. And then what I did is, because I couldn't just put the holes in the right places because they'd still be filled by the rest of the model, so I had to cut out squares on my model and then fill them with the holes, and that was very challenging to get them in the correct place. As you can see here, I think I messed up slightly. As you can see, there's a little line, and here, for instance, it didn't really print correctly. But the hardest part of this was definitely that the holes, in order to be printed correctly, needed an infill. So you can see how there's still some purple or red stuff over there, and in this hole. And that's the infill, which was supposed to help the holes print properly. But okay, so how the pieces work in Lego Technic is, you can see that it has this little edge around the hole, which is so that the thing's clicking and then can latch onto the ledge. But this means that when you print with infill, it fills up the ledge, so you can't put anything inside because it won't click in. So first what I had to do was use a screwdriver to take out all the infill, which was very challenging as I also didn't want to destroy the model completely. It worked a lot better on this print than on this one for some reason. And eventually what I had to do, because I couldn't get out normally, I had to drill into it to get it out, which explains why this hole is way too large. And this is definitely a major setback. I didn't really want to print the pieces again because I don't know how I would print it without the infill. But eventually it kind of worked out, especially this one, where the pieces fit in quite nicely, as you can see. But on this one, I need to keep it more together by just, see, it's not actually the pieces holding it together, but more than just that, it can't move around. So yeah, I definitely learned a lot from that, as in how to 3D print things and model them. And it was also a fun learning experience because now that I've built up some skills, I can 3D print other things in the future, as I definitely think that 3D printing is a very useful skill which you can use for a lot of projects. So yeah, that's my little 3D printing adventure. In my next video, I think I'll try to put the 3D prints, the motors, the thumb, and the fingers all together and show it in action. And then we're nearing the end of the project.